to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast, YouTube blog, and internet radio station on the German, Austrian, and Swiss startup scene. Today I do have a guest who is co-founder of a startup in Austria, but he's originally from the very north of Germany. That's why I welcome him with a traditional Moin.
Moin, Joe.
How are you doing, Jan?
I'm great. Sunny day in Austria. Thanks.
There are not a lot of people who are watching the full form video here, but we may tell our audience, the few 10,000s that are listening to this interview, that the background looked at first sight. I thought, is he in Bali? Because there's a lot of green, a lot of natural wood, nice space.
Yeah, I mean that's our office. That's our office in Graz, Austria.
You have to do something to bring people to the office. For everybody who's listening to this, I'm sorry, I sound a little bit like I have a cold. It's hay fever season and it's all over me. Really sorry about that. As we already teased, you are from the very north of Germany, Ostholstein, actually a place I just spent a nice vacation. Can you tell us a little bit how you grew up there and ended up at a university in Austria?
Well, I mean, yeah. So very originally, I'm actually from Essen, from North Rhine-Westphalia, but only spent my kind of first 2-3 years there, and then grew up in small and beautiful Eutin, which is in Schleswig-Holstein, a bit north of Hamburg. I mean, it's the flat land, a lot of lakes, also the sea, the Baltic Sea is very close. It's a nice area to grow up in, but then kind of after high school, you kind of the options are very limited. There's not much to do, and people are kind of a lot of my friends were fleeing to the bigger cities.
Hamburg may be a natural goal there, right?
Yeah, Hamburg is kind of like 80 kilometers away, and that's kind of the natural first step for many.
Mm-hmm. I see. Then how you did end up at the university in Graz in Austria?
I mean that's actually a bit of a longer story. I always had these kind of this interest in doing something good for the society in general. I mean, it sounds like big words, but it's already how I grew up. That kind of with some. You grow up in a privileged world, in privileged land. You have opportunities, and that also means you have responsibilities. That's a bit kind of the mindset that I grew up with. And at the same time, I was always fascinated by the startup stories from the entrepreneurs, the school dropouts that build the huge unicorn companies. And it's in the beginning, these worlds didn't fit together for me. So it's like, because social entrepreneurship wasn't a thing at that time when I was still in school, and kind of either you had the NGO side, kind of the donation driven doing good, or you had kind of the super capitalist high growth stories, only profit driven. That was kind of at least my thinking at that time when I left school. And then I spent some time in Latin America just to travel. Kind of, I thought that's the first and maybe last opportunity to spend 7 months in a row at a place without a plan, and that's what I did at that time. Learned some Spanish, and then was thinking, okay, what can I do? And was kind of constantly thinking about what the next steps are. And
sorry, I tend to get a little bit sidetracked from time to time, but you spent some time in South America. Muy bien. Can you tell us a few beautiful places that are kind of flying under the radar you would recommend people to visit?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a long time ago. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's still the same time today, same thing today. We started actually in Costa Rica, and then I spent, I think, 2 months in Panama. In Panama, I think in the north there's an island called Bocas del Toro, if I remember correctly, and I think it only cost me $140 to do my scuba diving license. I think the diving school said at that time it's the second cheapest place in the world to do scuba diving, and it was amazingly beautiful and kind of like what you imagine a Caribbean island to be like. And at the same time, being backpacking tourist, super limited budget. I think I like for the 7 months I spent the only 3,000 euros in total, including flights back and forth. So, and I didn't work during that time. So I was on a very low budget, and some lessons actually that I learned for the startup life there without knowing. Nevertheless, so Bocas del Toro, really nice. And another recommendation is really the inland of Argentina. Yeah, so we actually hitchhiked from the border of like Argentina, Bolivia down to the very, very south in
Patagonia.
Patagonia, yeah, Ushuaia, kind of the I think the furthest south city that exists. And that's amazingly beautiful. Kind of I really like it. And even though I'm a vegetarian, I enjoyed some meat during that time, and it's amazingly good.
Okay, now we can keep going.
Yeah, okay. So where did we? So how I got actually to Graz, right? That was the story. Right? So yeah, basically I then said, okay, let me study something that is kind of both. Doing good and also entrepreneurial. So I started studying energy and environmental management or something like that. And then, wasn't really interested in the studies. It was, and I recognized kind of in my first semester that I need to start doing, because this is like, I had enough of school and I always wanted to do stuff and kind of, and that's what actually got me going. I just said, okay, let's start building a business. I had a, let's say, family home that we were visiting regularly in Greece, and then I said, okay. I mean, I shortened the story now a bit, but in the end, I started to build a composting site there, or I was in the process of doing so. In the end, I didn't do it. But this is kind of what I like, the concept that I built during that time, the business plan, and so that was kind of in my first semesters at university, and then things developed from there. Yeah, I won the Social Impact Award that kind of was then launched at that time from the Viennese University. And the Impact Hub network, and that encouraged me as a quite young student, kind of to keep on going on the track, even though I didn't have a lot. Yeah, so I just tried to do one step after another and be kind of go out there, expose myself, and try to get real learning experiences.
I see. I was always wondering how you ended up in Greece with the composting plant, but now I do have an idea. According to what we talked before, the composting plant in Greece, did you shut it down or did you sell it?
No, actually, it was never realized. I mean, I got that to concept stage, and then I said, all right, either it can only fly if I actually go to Greece. So I then said, okay, let's give it a try. I had kind of set 1 year to go there and try to implement it. Met with local stakeholders, and in the end, I realized it's too much dependent on political will, because it's kind of in the waste regime of the municipality, and kind of you need to get them on board, and then you have kind of the whole political game of getting majorities. And I said, okay, that's too much. And then also kind of, non-Greek speaking. And I said, yeah, I'm not gonna kind of further push here, because they also said, it's like, we need to wait. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not, I'm not coming here just to wait. So I said, okay, I need to do something that kind of where I'm more, it can be more self-effective. And started to actually build a dropshipping business for organic fashion, and moved to Berlin for that. Yeah. And by the way, that was all still while doing my studies. Right? So I was kind of like back and forth, and didn't finish my studies at that time. Only after then 2 years in Berlin, I finally said, okay, I still want to at least have the bachelor degree, so that I have something in my pocket that people can relate to and say, okay, he achieved something. So
talking about drop shipping here, you did tell me it's called Goodwear, but I'm not necessarily want to go into too much detail. Sustainable clothing is a really, really great idea, and appreciate that you did it. But there's a lot of people out there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth, who are trying to make you believe that drop shipping, you just need to set up a website and business is going fine. The same with the guys at the vending machine who first put in the money and then 5 minutes later turn on the video camera and take it out and tell you what a great business this is, even though they make their money just with the people who follow them and buy their courses. Can you tell us a tiny bit about the reality of drop shipping here?
Yeah, I mean, that was in a completely different time. I mean, that was kind of like, when was it? In like 2011 or so. So it's like, this didn't exist, right? So there was, I'm not even sure. That was like before I had the first iPhone, right? So there wasn't even Insta. There was Insta, but just kind of to make photos, to have the retro filter for photos, if you remember that. But kind of there were certainly not the people kind of making business models out of courses, at least not on Insta. And I mean, in the reality, what we actually did was we were selling sustainable clothing that was produced already in larger volumes, but originally kind of meant to be used for merchandise, right? So that was kind of like that use had like for music merchandise and like all these type of things. So usually you had kind of prints on that, and we said, okay, let's just to get it going. I mean, that's perfectly fine. That was what I was wearing at that time. It's just kind of like just simple, like plain color stuff, and it was very cheap compared to other sustainable clothing that you were buying at that time, right? So where you had kind of like t-shirts from 80, 90 euros onwards, and that still being a student just didn't fit the budget. So that was a kind of completely different time when you didn't have a market for that. I mean, now you get you get a like organic cotton in H&M, right? So that wasn't the case at that time. It was very niche, and there was actually someone that was providing that, and it was possible kind of to do drop shipping, and we just kind of iterated on building a low risk business model at that time, just to kind of to practice entrepreneurship in a way, right? To see, okay, how does it actually, what are the concrete steps to actually build up a business? What are the concrete steps, to acquire the first customers, to do marketing, to build up a community, like these type of things. Yeah, it's like it wasn't a gigantic business at all, right? But still, kind of, it was profitable, and it just worked, and that was kind of for me the beauty at that time. I wanted to get something going and just figure it out. How does it work, and to put the different pieces together that you need in the business to make something work. Yeah. And by the way, I did that with my brother at that time, so it was also fun family business.
I see. The only question I have is, you said it was the organic clothing was kind of the base for getting merch to turn it into merchandise, get prints on and whatever. Did you get any any client, any customer, any band, any product that we would recognize today?
No, I mean, no. So this is kind of, that's not so our clients were kind of a B2C, right? So, but I was saying kind of because we didn't produce it ourselves, right? We bought something that was already on stock somewhere else, but meant to be used for merchandise, right? So kind of that's why they were already producing it and were kind of like had already economics of scale and could provide it at relatively cheap prices, especially in wholesale. But so this kind of, we just tweaked it and said, okay, let's try if we can place that as a more in the B2C market.
Mm-hmm. I see. And then at one point you then went from there. There was another very interesting jump when we talked before. You told me that you've been then a social business consultant in Albania, and then somehow you went back to Austria. So it was Greece, Berlin, Albania, Austria.
Yes. So
Berlin.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the meantime, like somehow, like in between there, I kind of like finished my studies. And then, that actually had been really interesting because that organization is called Yunus Social Business. Yunus had been kind of one of my idols and influences. He's the guy that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 with the Grameen Bank, kind of the concepts of the micro lending in Bangladesh originally. And then kind of what he invented was a social business, kind of the idea of a business not solely focused to generate monetary profits, but a business that is kind of focused on generating social profits, right? So that can be environmental or social. So that would be business orientated. So also profit orientated, but these profits would be used to generate more impact. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea and concept of Muhammad Yunus. Yunus Social Business then was an organization that he co-founded together with Saskia Breisten from was a BCG consultant before. And what they did is they went to developing countries. They had different organizations in, I don't know, Uganda, Haiti, several places, and one of them being Albania. And what they did there is kind of they helped to incubate startups, we would say, right? So it's kind of like a YC, but for kind of social orientated startups. And that was a super interesting time because these organizations attracted super talented people, right? So there were a lot of like Ivy League people in the organization that came with these these amazingly designed Excel finance sheets and then kind of work on a very kind of, in developing countries, like with a knowledge set that these usually have no access to whatsoever. So we were helping kind of like local startups to get off the ground, right? So kind of applying like, let's say very elaborated skills, experience, and also networks. These organizations, they receive donations from USA, they from like Richard Branson. That's kind of the network, and then kind of translating that to Albanian women knitting what's it called, carpets, yeah. And then kind of like say, okay, so how do you get that from these very fine artisanal created products, which they sell on local markets, have very little value capture, even though it's a very good, it's a very good product. And then we were kind of helping, okay, so how can we get that to make it a very exclusive thing, to have very good designers work on their designs, and then they have super high premium carpets presented in Paris at big fairs and so, and then generate profits kind of for that local regions, which would allow kind of to actually, build businesses and then, whole ecosystem is developed, right? So that was context, and it was super inspiring for me to work with the people and actually see what impact can be generated. And to the date, it has been a real great experience, and I'm very thankful for it.
I can totally understand that, not only through helping people, but also to be able to travel and to network globally. That is something I also really cherish, that you also can do, for example, in consulting. Very, very good thing to do. Let us now get into, we're talking for 20 minutes already. Let us now get into Metaloop, because I do believe most people tuned in for this company. By the way, the fastest growing company according to FT in Austria in 2022, 2023, and 2024 in a joint award of Statista and Financial Times. You've been in the top 3. Congratulations, by the way. And now tell us how to set up a site like this. Just imagine we are on Instagram and you're an influencer.
It's actually it's not that Instagram bloomy as it might sound. Actually,
it never is, but that's Instagram versus reality, right?
Yeah. So actually, I had no touch point with metals or kind of, let's say, the physical world really whatsoever. But at the same time, I always was fascinated by kind of what the internet allows you to do. And I met my now co-founder, it's kind of like 8 years ago from now, Alexander Schlick, who I met in Vienna, and he was or still is owner of a scrapyard in Graz. Yeah, and so he was working in that. So before, he also university, then finance in Asia, and then came back kind of to work in the family-owned scrapyard. Worked there 5 years or so, and then said, this is, I'm like, I have scrap metal here. Everything I do, I sell to one bigger scrap dealer, and that can't be it. Yeah. So, and this is then kind of how he got into the market and discover, going to international fairs for the market, and just like how relationship driven that market is, and kind of, even though it's a commodity market, how let's say how undeveloped that market and how inefficient it is. Yeah. And so at that time we met and said, okay, here's a potential. For me, it was kind of only the tick boxes. Okay, it's recycling. We can do something that makes sense, something sustainable, and at the same time, it's a market that has been untapped from digitalization. So internet doesn't play any role in that industry, and at the same time, it's a $600 billion industry. So that was the that was the initial starting point, and said, okay, let's digitalize that. That was the first idea, and then we started actually with publishing scrap metal prices, something that sounds very easy. I mean, it is relatively easy to do, but it's also something that nobody did at that time. And
you made a market transparent. You helped in getting information out there. Was that about right?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we had the idea, okay, because we started with that problem set from the from the scrap dealer perspective, and you have always a supply constrained market. So you always want to have more material because that allows you to do more business. That's kind of the initial idea. So then what we actually did is we developed a web shop where people could sell scrap metal, right? So basically they could sell scrap metal to us. We will publish prices. And then obviously the people come from all the regions. And then the next step was already, okay, so let's not only do everything to Graz, to that original scrapyard from my co-founder, but, let's do it to all the other cities in the DACH region as well. And then we bootstrapped that. And in this process, you publish scrap metal prices. And publishing scrap metal prices is something that is new to this industry, and that is, I just want to underline that in a commodity market, they are usually very known for being very efficient markets. You say even commoditized, right? So things are commoditized, which means you have a very efficient market. You usually have exchanges where material are traded. You have several prices per seconds that are somewhat accessible, and that's not the case for scrap metal. And we had the situation that the people in the industry would call it, "Are you crazy? You're educating the market. The people then know what the value of the material is, and you're destroying the market. Are you crazy doing that?" And that's probably also one of the reasons why the scrap dealer has the image in the society that he very little cheese has. So yeah, and then it got to that point that even the association was saying, can we accuse them of publishing false information in the market? Yeah. Because they are publishing prices and that's destroying the market. And we had a leaked document from the from an association meeting, which says, no, unfortunately, we cannot sue them because it's the prices are real and it's not illegal. Yeah, that's that has been the dynamics in the market. And long story short, we are not supplying to the scrap dealers that much anymore. We're not running you still run the web shop, but it's only a very small 1-digit percentage of our volumes. What we now mostly do.
Is the association still mad at you?
I don't know. There has never been an official dialogue on that. It's I just found it an anecdote that is that's metaphorical for the situation in the industry. And that at the same time, the metal is the material that can be recycled endless times, right? So it's a perfect material for the circular economy, and because it has the value is so high, it's also the circular economy that works the best. Yeah. So you see also in the developing countries, the first informal job is the waste pickers, right? The guys that pick up the aluminum, the iron from the streets. Yeah.
Yeah. Return the cans here in Germany.
And now it's called circular economy, but it's that's the circular economy that has always been working the best if you compare it to plastics or paper or so, where the value of the material is much lower and the economic incentive is not there in that, or not comparatively as high as with the other materials. So actually, the scrap dealers would also have the potential to be called the sustainability heroes of our time, right? But that's not at all the association or the imagination that we have when we think about this this group of entrepreneurs. Nevertheless, long story short, so now we actually deal with mostly with very large industrial players, right? So automotive sector, electronic sector, these type of large volume producers that produce scrap on an ongoing basis. We contract them with longer term contracts. We help them to, first of all, increase their revenue, so get more money for the scrap metal. But we also provide them with software that gives them control about what's going on with the scrap metal. Yeah, because that's still something that's ongoing, where it's hard to control because you have changing volumes, you have always the time changing prices, you have different materials, and then you have different locations, oftentimes in different countries, and that's something that makes it very hard to manage and to control. And that's why we help them with software that we provide to them. And then in the back, we have built a platform that allows us to understand, okay, where's the demand for what type of material? Yeah, so that's steel mills, that's foundries, and all over Europe, Asia, some in Americas. And then what we do is matchmaking the actual settlement of the transaction. Yeah, so make sure the material travels straight from the seller, from the manufacturer, to the recycler. So the one that remelts the material and kind of creates value out of it.
I would be interested. You've been talking about circular economy here. I was wondering, how large are the circles? Meaning, does it make economical sense to ship all the stuff around in Europe, all around certain parts of Asia, all around North America? Or are there certain shipments even going from one continent to another because it's economically viable?
Yeah, I mean, that very much depends on the material itself. And also on the economic situations in the different parts. Yeah, so I mean, first of all, think about like one truck. So when I say one truck, it's roughly 25 tons. And then if you have like 25 tons of iron, that's maybe has a value of like 30,000 euros, let's say. No, it's a bit less. But nevertheless, if you compare it to copper, which is now at above 10,000 euros per ton, you are already at €250,000 euro in value per truck. Yeah, and then if you compare kind of the transport costs, so just from an economical standpoint, there is not so much of a difference if you transport it kind of from, let's say, France to Poland, or if you transport it from France to South Korea. Yeah, so because a lot of the sea containers, right, that come from Asia, that ship us all the nice products, the TVs, the computers, the BYDs. Now, so they come like fully utilized, huge vessels. And back, they are not so utilized, right? So oftentimes you have like empty containers. So that means kind of the freight from Europe to Asia is, at times it always changes, right? And then you have kind of Suez Canal being blocked and like all these type of things. So it's not always the same, but it maybe costs €2,500 to ship a container there. And then if the freight from, let's say, France to Poland, what I said, is also going to be around 1,500. So it's maybe 1,000 euros different. And then if you take that in relation to the value of the good, it's not such a high impact. Yeah. So if there's a lot of economic growth, if there's like the Indian economy now coming up, building a lot of infrastructure, building a lot of maybe grids, batteries, container terminals, like all these things need metal. Yeah. So if there's generally more GDP growth, they have a higher demand for materials, they pay higher prices. That's kind of the general game in world trade that's going on.
Our American audience, 25 metric tons is around 50,000 pounds. Because all the people are asking, a metric system, I hate that. How much is that? Anyway, that is already interesting because you've been saying you work with, that's something we've already hammered out before we discussed. You work with certain manufacturers to really get their scrap. You're not buying it basically from junkyards anymore. You buy it from the people who produce it, have steady contracts, and then have on the other side, for example, mills that really do use it on a regular basis. So I'd say there are some really stable circles evolved there. But on the other hand, it did have two spectacular pieces that you actually scrapped, you told me. Two Airbus planes from the Belgian government. By the way, that's a picture that ended up on your LinkedIn profile, right? And a power generator from the atomic power plant in Mülheim-Kärlich, but one that did not get any radiation.
Yeah, I mean that's that's also the beauty of the scrap metal world. You kind of, let's say, you get to see a lot of things that usually don't hit the come to public, and Yeah, I mean, funny enough, we have a lot of businesses that reach us and say, "Hey, I have something here to that needs to be demolished, that needs to be scrapped, and I need a price for it." Yeah, and since there is kind of the normal way for that is I have something that has to go. I go for I Google for a local scrap dealer or a demolition company and ask for a quote, right? So and then you ask for 3 quotes, and that's how you kind of have the idea of I have a fair market statement. And now kind of we also come into the equation, and that over regionally. So kind of not only the regional offering, but, okay, let's also ask Metaloop. And then we also give an offer. Yeah. And the good thing is we have kind of more direct ways, and we bring kind of large volume to the end consumers of the scrap metal, which allows us to get better pricing conditions, which we can also partially forward to our sellers. Yeah. But this way we get some really interesting inbound requests for quotes. And yeah, one of them had been 2 Airbus planes actually at Brussels airport. And it turned out in the end it were the Belgium government planes that used to fly. Then they had huge issues, and at some point they couldn't fly anymore. When we scrapped them, the engines and so on were already gone. So there was first this process of okay, what can we resell as parts actually, right? So that the engines are the most valuable part, but I think they even had the seats taken out and all these things. But yeah, then I saw these planes there. We already ordered a photograph there because we said, okay, that's going to be a good opportunity to take some nice pictures. And then I was just quickly thinking, okay, am I going to now actually climb on that plane to take the picture? And said, okay, that's a once in a life opportunity. I've now or never. And then I said, yeah, okay, it's just
that would have been my next trivia question. How did you get up there?
Yeah, actually, I found a letter somewhere, and then I actually also I put on my suit. I thought, okay, maybe I take my suit or not, and then I just on the place there, I just got changed and said, okay, let's climb up there. It was a bit because it's quite high up actually, right? So it was a bit scary but yeah, if you kind of stay right at the top, then you don't slip down. And I said, okay, let's do it. And then they were already, because the runway is actually direct next to it. It was on a, let's say, airplane parking lot next to the runway. You saw the planes already always taken off next to me. And I already got some attention from the airport, where then the officials were taking photos and asking whether it's all correct, what's going on there.
Okay, I see. We already in Brussels. Talking about market dynamics, do you foresee any changes in the EU regulations around recycling impacting your business model and your markets?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, unfortunately, this market is not harmonized in the EU, right? So it's a bit of a hassle for us in each country that we are operative in. We kind of have to check, okay, what is the environmental legislation here? You have to get the permits. You have to kind of do oftentimes the reporting. It's let's say from a market perspective, it's a bit annoying. I mean, of course, it helps us kind of to build up entry barriers, but yeah, would rather appreciate if we didn't have them, and we would have actually one unified market in that in the waste regime as well. Changes, I mean, there are a lot of talks of regulating exports of waste from EU. The EU says, okay, I mean, metal scrap is actually defined as a waste, even though it's considered as a resource now by everyone. So there are a lot of talks of actually banning exports. So far, it's not happening. Might be a smart thing to do, because I mean, in the end, everybody knows that we don't have raw materials, and we don't. I mean, we need it. We need to recycle it. At the same time, Europe is also not in all the cases very competitive. So just banning it also doesn't maybe doesn't cut it, because in the end you still need the smelters that still need to be able to pay the energy bill, which is also very high in Europe, and then to produce a commodity in the end that also is being exported in some cases. So it's a complicated topic, not that easy. And I mean, in the end, for us, we have to deal with whatever comes. So it's I don't spend too much time on the regulation topic, because it's we have to deal with whatever it is. We want to build up a global impact company, so it's not gonna it's not going to have too much impact. We can deal with whatever outcome it's going to be. We are agile. We don't have kind of any physical assets that are being effective. So, if needed, we can, stay in the region. We can move out of the region, and have kind of like separate business units. We can adopt.
I was wondering, revenue streams. I do understand you make money from the logistics, transporting the stuff, helping to organize transporting, because my understanding is you're an asset light company. You don't own any of the inventory. You don't own any of the storage spaces, and you don't own any of the logistics entities that ship or drive or do something, or even fly these over. I was wondering, what are like your primary revenue streams? Do you make most money from the fees, from the financing, or the logistics? Because you support your clients in all three of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, these are all, let's say, indirect revenue streams. So our business model is actually is a merchant of record business model. So that means we become actually contractual partners, both to the sellers as to the buyers. So, the material also goes through our balance sheet. And then, so to the sellers, we usually quote, picked up. So kind of we pay them 100, picked up at their place. And then we sell it somewhere where we get a bit more than 100. Let's say, so we get 110 somewhere else, or 105. Yeah. Delivered to another place. And then kind of with that delta, we have to pay the transport. We have to pay financing, because usually, we give our buyers option whether they pay directly or whether they pay after 30 days, after 60 days. And of course, that means we're financing them, and that also costs something. So but it's, in the end, it's all priced into the price of the product itself, of the material.
Since you guys don't do a lot of the physical work, I would say there's not necessarily a hard limit to your scalability.
Yeah. So, yes, in generally, yes. What's limiting our scalability is basically our execution capability. Yeah. So, and that's actually one of the biggest challenges, because you have so many opportunities popping up, right? You can go there's so much things that come on your desk, like emails that you get of kind of like, couldn't you dive more into here or there? It's like, and there's kind of so many connecting things, or let's say things that are, close to what we do. And at the same time, you really have to have kind of the bigger goal in mind. And the question is really what to focus on, because at the end of the day, the day has only 24 hours. We only have something like 60 people, and we only have a limited capital reserve. So this is where you have more of an allocation problem on, what do you spend time on, and where do you invest the capital, and that's kind of the biggest limitation to the scalability, in my opinion, to really that you can only do one step after another. Yeah, but just from our business model, we don't have any physical yards or trucks or anything. So there's we are quite agile. At the same time, of course, you have network effects, right? So, you build up relationships with your sellers, with the buyers. They're usually, larger companies. So, once you get deeper in there, it opens up more opportunities, and, you have, you have network effects from, let's say, intensifying that these relationships and doing more of what we're already doing. So that's not necessarily a limitation, but kind of it suggests to go deeper in there, and it kind of it helps you to build network effects and also entry barriers.
I would have a lot more questions, but I'm already teasing you for more than 45 minutes straight recording time already. Really thankful for that. Thank you very much. I would like to close with the two standard question. Question number one, future funding. You just raised the largest European investment for steel scrap. 16 million euros in a Series A funding. Altogether, you raised more than 18 million euros according to Crunchbase, but you told me there's also some EU money involved, so it's rather more on the 20 million euro side. Would you guys be open to talk to new investors, getting into into your investor crowd like Statkraft Ventures, FJ Labs, First Mark from New York, and Silence VC?
Yeah. So at that time, it was that was probably the headline from like some steel-related publication. But it was actually, I think, the largest European funding round for any like recycling or let's say software or internet-related recycling business. So it's even larger, and that's actually very sad because, I mean, first of all, like 60 million is also not that much, and Europe is kind of, at least claims to be at the forefront of, let's say, recycling and climate tech. So good news in the meantime. I think Scilab, they raised a 55 million Series A for battery recycling. So finally, we have that we also see progress there. Back to your question. Yeah, I mean, we are still focused on and heads down on actually executing with the funding that we received. But yes, we are also let's say not yet planning, also not considering, but we have a gigantic market. We have still, let's say, a lot to tackle and to figure out, and so yeah, we are considering to raise more further on as well.
Every investor interested and listening to this, down here in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this, wherever you're watching this, there will be a link to your LinkedIn profile and people can reach out to you. And the second or last question, of course, as always, are you looking for talented people?
Yes, of course. Always.
Always. I suggest we just link down here your career website, which you may have to share with me soon. And then we should be totally fine and everybody can look up all the jobs you have on offer, because people are listening to this interview for the next few years. And I don't think we should discuss single positions there. Sounds good?
Sounds good. Thank you very much for the invite, Joe.
How do you say goodbye in Graz?
Baba.
Baba? Really? Okay. With a baba, I'll leave you to the rest of your workday. Thank you very much, Jan. It was a pleasure having you as a guest.
Thanks, Joe. It's been really fun.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.